What is up, people, and welcome to Black Travel in History, where we learn Black history and see Black history. Today's subject is the top 5 Black artifacts of ancient Egypt and where to see them. Now, I use the word top very loosely because basically all of ancient Egypt was Black anyways. But these are just the 5 I chose to highlight in this video. And if you guys like this, I'll do a part 2, part 3, whatever, we'll keep this thing going, alright? Now, before I even get started, I do want to clarify some things. There are a lot of people who say ancient Egypt wasn't Black, they call it pseudoscience, Afrocentrism, etc. And they just call it a bunch of hot garbage, basically, okay? But ancient Egypt was a Black African civilization, okay? It started out that way from the Nile Valley, up from Sudan, upwards towards the north, etc. But then the Egyptians were conquered by the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, Persians, and that's why the modern Egyptians are very mixed with those different ethnic groups and don't really tend to look like the ancients did, except more so in the south, they still have dark skin and stuff like that. And this is not just my opinion, okay? I'm not just saying like, you know, I'm a guy on the internet, I looked at some hieroglyphs and I'm like, oh, they look Black to me, and that's definitely true. No, I'll show you the historical facts that prove that they were Black and some very strong historical authorities which I think are very reliable and make complete sense in their assessments. The first one being Herodotus, okay? Herodotus and other Greeks, other Romans described the ancient Egyptians as being Black or brown with woolly hair. So what is woolly hair? This is woolly hair, okay? Afro-textured hair. Afro-textured hair is woolly hair. The ancient Egyptians were Black Africans. There are also statues of ancient Egyptians which look like Black Africans, okay? Why would they depict them that way? Why would they describe them as Black and brown with woolly hair? Because they were Black Africans. That is just the simple fact of the matter. And up until the 1700s, the world already accepted and knew that ancient Egypt was a Black African civilization. It's only with the advent of racist pseudoscience that different people started questioning whether they were Black or not, usually with the premise of like, oh, you know, there were Negroes couldn't possibly make such a great civilization, therefore the ancient Egyptians must have been like dark-skinned Europeans or something, because back then people were so racist and foolish in their thought that they believed that only Caucasians or white people could have great civilizations or intellectual greatness, etc., and that garbage polluted their interpretation of history, archaeology, and science. So as far as my view on ancient Egypt compared to modern Egypt, I literally believe the exact same thing that the father of Egyptology believed, Jean-François Champollion. Let's hear what he said.
The first tribes that inhabited Egypt, that is, the Nile Valley between the Sian Cataract and the sea, came from Abyssinia to Sennar. The ancient Egyptians belonged to a race quite similar to the Kenus or Barabra, present inhabitants of Nubia. In the coast of Egypt, we do not find any of the characteristic features of the ancient Egyptian population. The coast are the result of crossbreeding with all the nations that have successively dominated Egypt. It is wrong to seek in them the principal features of the old race. This manner of viewing the tableau is all the more accurate because, on the other tombs, the same generic names reappear, always in the same order. We find there Egyptians and Africans represented in the same way, which could not be otherwise, but the Namu, the Asians, and the Tamu, Europeans, present significant and curious variants.
So there you have it right there. Herodotus, the Romans, and the father of Egyptology, okay, all agreed that the ancient Egyptians were Black Africans. It shouldn't be controversial. It's just a fact is a fact. History is history. What happened, happened. That's it. And if you look at the way the ancient Egyptians depicted themselves, the dominant majority of ancient Egyptian art of themselves has dark brown skin, Black hair, African hairstyles, African clothing, sometimes they even have leopard skins and everything, some of them have afros, etc., because they were Black Africans, okay? I personally think, based on the remaining artwork from the Egyptians, because it seems that a lot of it has been destroyed, but the remaining ones, predominantly I think the people who would fit them most accurately would be like the Beja people from Sudan and Egypt, as well as Ethiopians, Somalians, Eritreans, and they're Black people, okay? They may not be the exact same phenotypical expression of African genetics as, for example, a Nigerian individual may be, but they're both still black. And be sure to watch to the end because the last artifact is so undeniably black that if you say it isn't black. So with all of that being said, let's get to the video. The first artifact we have is the bust of Queen T. Now, Queen T was the great royal wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III. He was the father of Amenhotep IV, otherwise known as Akhenaten, who was the father of Tutankhamun. So King Tut's grandmother looked like this. She had dark brown skin and an afro, okay? You can see this bust at the Neues Museum in Germany. Our next artifact really a group of artifacts, is Afro combs, okay? Afro combs have been found all over Egypt. They're in many different museums and stuff like that. And just another proof that the ancient Egyptians had Afro textured hair. You don't really see Europeans with Afro picks, okay? That's just quite absurd and ridiculous to argue. And as I mentioned earlier, many ancient Egyptian statues, artifacts, paintings, etc. feature Afro-textured hair and even full-blown afros, as you saw in the thumbnail of this video. So some possible locations to see these are the British Museum in London, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Louvre Museum in Paris, France, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., and other regional museums. Now, these are just some possible places to see Afro combs, okay? I'm not guaranteeing that they're definitely there, but they're such a common artifact that they're often seen in many different exhibits throughout the world. If you specifically want to see Afro combs, contact us and we'll look into it for you and find the exact location and make sure they have what you're looking for. Now we come to the third artifact, which is really the word artifact, I guess, is kind of loose here, but the Sphinx, okay? Now, the Sphinx is one of the most iconic ancient architectural works of ancient Egypt and the world in general. I mean, apart from the pyramids, I can't think of anything else that is as iconic. I mean, I guess maybe the Colosseum is as iconic, but still, the Sphinx and the pyramids are kind of like the top there, right? Now, as you will notice, the Sphinx is damaged. Its nose and lips are like kind of well, they're gone for the most part. But those who saw the Sphinx before its destruction described it as a clearly African Negro artifact. And if you look at it today, you can still see the prognatism, which is very common in many African people. For example, Constantin Francois de Volney was a French philosopher and a specialist of the Orient. In his 1787 book entitled The Travels in Egypt and Syria, he said this:
Olave a blotted face, puffed up eyes, flat nose, thick lips, in a word, the true face of the mulatto. I was tempted to attribute it to the climate, but when I visited the Sphinx, its appearance gave me the key to the riddle. On seeing that head, typically negro in all its features, I remembered the remarkable passage where Herodotus says, for me, I judge the Colchians to be a colony of the Egyptians because, like them, they are black with woolly hair. In other words, the ancient Egyptians were true Negroes of the same type as all native-born Africans. That being so, we can see how their blood, mixed for several centuries with that of the Romans and Greeks, must have lost the intensity of its original color, while retaining nonetheless the imprint of its original mold. We can even state as a general principle that the face is a kind of monument, a bull, in many cases, to attest or shed light on historical evidence on the origins of peoples.
So he not only said the Sphinx was very Negro and black, but the ancient Egyptians themselves were that way as well. And he also references the fact that modern Egyptians are very mixed with Greek and Roman blood, which is what I said earlier, and Jean-Francois Champollion also agreed with this. Another historical testimony to the blackness of the Sphinx is Dominique Vivon-Denon. In 1798, he drew the Sphinx as it looked like before its destruction. He stated the following:
Though its proportions are colossal, the outline is pure and graceful, the expression of the head is mild, gracious, and tranquil, the character is African, but the mouth and lips of which are thick, has a softness and delicacy of execution truly admirable. It seems real life and flesh. Art must have been at a high pitch when this monument was executed, for, if the head wants what is called stele, that is the say, the straight and bold lines which give expression to the figures under which the Greeks have designated their deutes, yet sufficient justice has been rendered to the fine simplicity and character of nature which is displayed in this figure.
The Sphinx is located in the Giza Plateau on the west bank of the Nile in Egypt. Our fourth artifact is the Tomb of Hue. Who was Hue? He was the ancient Egyptian viceroy of Kush during the reign of King Tutankhamun. In the Tomb of Hue, we see Egyptians and Nubians depicted with the same skin color and the same physical features. Yes, some of the Nubians are pitch black compared to the brown of the Egyptians and the brown of the other Nubians, but that is a common thing in Africa. And just because some of the Africans are pitch black doesn't mean that the other ones that aren't pitch black aren't black. That's like saying Akon is black, but Kanye West isn't black. That's just nonsense. Both groups were black Africans, okay? And it's weird because a lot of people always show the pitch black Nubians, who look very similar to the Suda people of Sudan, as if they're like the only kind of black person in the world. I mean, most black people, quote unquote black people, don't look pitch black, like actually the color black. That's actually a very rare thing. Most black people are brown. And some ancient Egyptians were depicted pitch black as well, like Amos Nefertari. Another argument made by some people is that because the Egyptians and the Nubians fought against each other, then they couldn't have both been black. That is like saying in World War I, different groups of Europeans who were warring against each other, they couldn't all be white because they were fighting each other. I mean, the Tomb of Hue is located at the Valley of the Nobles in Kurnet Murai, which is part of the Theban necropolis on the west bank of the Nile opposite Luxor. Finally, we've reached the fifth and final artifact, this being an ancient Egyptian wall painting of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the grandfather of King Tut. As you see here, he is clearly a black African man with an afro, okay? If you say he isn't black... Now I'm guessing that the original is very damaged, okay? And the other ones are reconstructions or artist renditions of what it would have looked like originally, but even the damaged one you can clearly see is a black man with an afro. Why would it be a black man with an afro ruling Egypt? Because Egypt was black African people. It's really that simple, it's not confusing. It's very simple for me. Now you can see this wall painting on the north wall of Chamber E of his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Now if you want to see any of these black artifacts in real life, head to blacktravelinghistory.com and we have tons of packages, activities, etc. that you can book there, or you can contact us if you want a special request or you need flights and all sorts of stuff. You know, we can help you with all that process for free. It's completely free. And we offer countless other destinations as well besides Egypt, from other parts of Africa, the Caribbean, South America. If you name it, we offer it. If you found this video useful, please give it a like and share it with those who you think will appreciate it, and that will also give our business more exposure, which we can deeply appreciate. Feel free to leave a comment as well if there are any other ancient Egyptian artifacts you want us to talk about, or other African countries or other Black history topics. Leave a comment down below, and of course, subscribe. Thank you for your time.